So, welcome to another episode of Tuesday Pulse AI. I'm Chuck Boyce, Cibi Creative, and we're on another track B. And if you've joined any of these in the past, A is application oriented, which I haven't done in a while. B is the business identity, how to use AI in a business, and next week I'm going to start a new track, which is C, which is actually talking about the 5 W's, or actually not the what of AI, but the who, what, where, when, why type approach to why you want to use AI. And so anyway, this is all about the true cost of AI, the real cost, what the license fee doesn't cover. The most expensive month isn't your first month where you actually sign the contract and you say, yay, I got this $47 a month or $99 or $200 a month package. It's the month after you go live. It's when you realize that there's extra costs, and the costs are not visible at first, but when the integration bill arrives, when you see what your token usage looks like, when somebody realizes nobody owns the output review, today, talk about the math. If you've already experienced and you're surprised at the cost and didn't see what's coming, I know I did, about 6 or 7 months ago when vibe coding just came out. I went for one of these $49 packages and thought that great, I'll do all this fun stuff with AI vibe coding. And then I got the bill the next month and it was $350. And that was a shock. But here's why. You've heard hidden price tags before. It's today it gets its own hour. No tools and no affiliates, just math. This is not anti-AI. This is pro-decision, and you can only understand how much you want to bring AI into your business if you understand what the true costs are going to be. So there's 5 layers to cost. And starting at the bottom, the first one is what you see up front, your license and subscription fee. This is when you go to a vendor site and you look at pricing and it says, great, $99 a month or $299 a month or $47 a month, whatever it is. That is just your base price. Layer 2 is when you start getting the add-ons, the consumption-based cost that scale with use. So the more you use it, the more your costs are going to be. And you'll realize this when you start doing APIs, if you start bringing in the next layer, the integration cost. If you bring in Make or Zapier or N8N or one of those other tools that have integration, to do the integration you need APIs. And when you use APIs, they charge you for everything going in and out. You have token in and token out. And if you're not familiar with tokens, tokens are roughly a word. It's not an actual word. It's actually the characters and punctuation and everything. And so a token is pretty much 8 characters. And it could be letters, punctuation, or spaces. But basically, you have a bunch of data going in and you have more data coming out. And they charge at different levels. Certain level for going in and a certain level for going out. And when you do an integrated tool, you're actually writing real workflows. That's where these costs come in. Layer 4 is where you get the rework and the quality review and the human time that's spent on these things. And so when you first bring AI in, you don't just say, oh, I'm going to implement this new tool. You have to have a plan. You have to test it. You have to go through it. There's going to be rework. There's going to be some person involved that is writing these workflows, that's testing these workflows, that are integrating it with your data. They're doing a lot of extra work. And most businesses don't take that into the formula of what the actual cost is going to be. And so if you add in the human cost of what your employee or your contractor or your vendor is adding on, there is that extra human aspect. And then there's When things fail, you already have sunk costs of you paid for a subscription, you've paid for some integration, you have some tools, but if something fails and you have to start over, how much time was wasted? How much was the restart cost of this? And that is a big impact because a lot of time these technologies don't work the first time and you're going to have to redo it. So going into layer one, the license fee is very simple. It's the smallest number on your budget. It's visible, predictable. It's what the vendors put on their main page. You have to acknowledge it and then move on to the layers that actually impact your bottom line. API and token usage. Tokens, again, as I mentioned, they're roughly 750 words is 1,000 tokens. And so you pay for input and output separately. Numbers, this is as of April 2026. It's now May, but ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, they all change their prices. Every time a new version comes out, there's an additional cost. And so if you're looking at something like ChatGPT 5.5, which came out last week, it's a lot different than 4. It's more expensive. And so depending on which model you're using, how much you want to use, do you want to use the thinking mode? Do you want to use the base mode? Do you want to use any extra features? They're going to nickel and dime your costs. And so depending on which model, which platform, whatever, the prices are going to vary every month. So consumption-based pricing scales with usage. The more you use it, the more it's going to cost, and especially if you're getting into the API usage cost, if you have 50 people running a workflow that runs 4 times a day, that can get to be really expensive. And so it adds up. It's not zero, but it does compound like interest. So agents, here's where it gets worse. Again, not being anti-AI, agents just multiply by volume. And so you look at one prompt for a single user, it's a single request. It's very easy to calculate. Once you get an agent involved, you start getting multiple agents, multiple chains, multiple calls, multiple APIs. So 12 API calls that look like one prompt may be 12 calls because 12 of your employees are using that same call. So you start doing the math and it starts to become a little more expensive than what you originally anticipated. So next is the integration. Integration with anything means that there has to be an API, and that means that somebody has to write the code, somebody has to maintain the code, somebody has to look at whatever you're doing. There's going to be prompts involved, there's going to be context files involved, there's going to be a need to update this. And so if you have a contractor that's costing $100 to $200 an hour, and it's going to be 20 to 80 hours of work, and then if it breaks and you have to retool and you have to rework, you spend a lot of cash on these contractors or employees that are doing the integration work. And again, that's not in your subscription price. This is your employee cost, and you do need employees. AI is not going to eliminate employees. It's going to eliminate tasks. And there's still going to be somebody that needs to perform a task. AI may eliminate some of them, but not others. Then, here's a real interesting thing. AI output requires humans. It's not optional. It's the ownership gap that I've talked about in my 5 blind spots. The ownership, somebody has to be responsible for it. Way back in the 70s, IBM had written something that says you can't blame a computer for making a problem or for having a problem. It's the human that operated it. The same thing with AI. You can't blame AI. The AI did this. And so you think of 2.5 hours a person's 30 minutes a day reviewing outputs. It really adds up. So you get all these burden rates, you get review time, it has dollar value. Somebody is spending time to do something with AI, manually recovering, reworking, doing, there's a lot of cost involved. And what's worse is if something goes wrong and there's nobody there to review it, you may have regulatory costs on top of that, the potential for fines, for misleading customers, for having a reputational hit, for something that you're sending out the wrong pricing and it's a budgetary hit. There's a lot of things that humans really do still need to be involved in this loop. And a failure and restart, as I mentioned. Sunk costs means that you've already paid the fees, you've already spent time integrating, you've already done training, and then something breaks. And then you have to go back a month or two to figure out what didn't work, how it failed, what needs to be replaced. And that number can be huge, $20,000, $50,000. And if you're thinking about a $200 subscription for a year, that's $2,400. And then you add all the rework, the human factors, all that cost, it can become pretty expensive. And so the data and infrastructure costs you're already carrying. AI doesn't run on goodwill, it runs on data, and your data has to be clean because AI can only work with what it's been trained on and what it has access to. So if you don't have clean data, AI is not going to give you clean results that you expect. There's all sorts of other things according related to data, storage and processing. So when you start adding documents and start adding context and start building indexes of your content so AI can search it, it has to be hosted somewhere. It has to be updated, whether it's in your Google Docs or your Dropbox or something in another storage. That has to be updated. It has to be stored. There's a cost to storage. It has to be synced. It has to be maintained. That's just the beginning. It's where it is. But then there's all of that operational ongoing cost that doesn't again appear in a license cost. It's an ongoing thing. That's where I ran into my biggest problem when I started vibe coding, was that I didn't realize that the vibe coding tool that I chose used a database in the back end, and the database in the back end was a really good one, but anytime the database was active, they had an ongoing storage fee, and the more access you had. So even when you weren't doing it, even when I was testing apps, I forgot to turn them off or pause them. And so that storage was considered active, and they were charging me for all of these test cases that I was running, even though I didn't run them anymore. But the storage was there. And so Supabase was the back end, and it doesn't matter if it's Supabase or others, there is going to be a storage, maintenance, synchronization, ongoing cost. And then there's the governance, which again, most people don't understand. What goes into your model, whichever model you're using, whether it's OpenAI or Anthropic or Google or Microsoft or Amazon, whatever, there is going to be a model, and the vendors need your data to process it via AI. And so where is it being stored? What kind of regulations are there? Is it under the General Data Protection Regulation, the GPDR, or the GDPR? Is it under the California Consumer Protection Agency? Is it under HIPAA? Is it under FERPA? There's all sorts of consumer privacy, consumer protection laws that are not considered. So where is the data being stored? Is it in Europe? Is it in the United States? Do you have access? There's financial data. What if what if one of your employees puts in your private financial information into this? Who has access to it? Where's it being stored? How is it being trained? Human resource data, same type of thing. So if your vendor's storing the data and you don't have access to the terms of where it's being stored, it's a compliance cost that may cost you because, again, these state consumer protection laws are protecting the consumer. So it doesn't matter where your company is based or where you're sourcing your data. If your client is in California, you have to deal with California Consumer Protection or Privacy Act. And so you have to understand that you're dealing with multiple governance regulations across multiple states or multiple countries. Europe has its own laws. Asia's starting to put their laws in. United States, because of the fight between the federal government and the states are trying to put their own privacy laws in. The Fed is saying, oh, we don't want to stop AI, but there's all of those protection laws that go way beyond AI. It's not technology, it's protection. So shadow AI is something that, if you've been to previous versions of this episode, shadow AI is where someone on your team decides that they're going to catch up on business. And so at home, they're using their private version of Claude or ChatGPT, and they don't realize that they haven't turned off training on this model. And so they're putting in your proprietary business information so they can get out a customer proposal tomorrow. And they're just trying to save time, but they don't realize that they're exposing your company to things that they're not even aware of. And so it's these free chat GPTs or free Claude or free Gemini. And now with Gemini, with Google, what they're doing is they're embedding it into all of their tools. And so you're not using a governed Google Workplace and they're using their own personal, their email or their spreadsheets or their anything that they do within Google may be using your data with no governments, no visibility from you because they're doing it from home. But this is really happening. So here's the big thing, that an employee costs money and AI changes the work. So you have training time. You bring in a new tool and you do realistic onboarding, 4 to 8 hours a person for a basic adoption of a new AI. If you don't have documented SOPs or standard operating procedures, training is a moving target. Every update, everybody, if you don't have a documented standard operating procedure for a common task, say customer onboarding, and you ask 3 of your employees, what does customer onboarding mean to you? They will all give you a slightly different version of it. But which of those slightly different versions do you train your AI on? Which is the AI acting upon? So again, you have to think of AI as a new employee, and you have to give it explicit instructions as to how you want it to act. So when you're training people, you train them on what AI has been trained on, or you train AI on what your employees have been trained on. So again, now you're thinking about AI as an employee and how it affects your business. So every meaningful AI needs somebody who owns it. It's not IT, it's a person on the team who understands the workflow and can watch when the tool drifts. So what drift means is that if nobody owns it, nobody can catch the slow drift. And what the slow drift would be is when you train a program, an AI that's going to be a part of your workflow, there's going to be a prompt and a context behind it. And if your business changes, if you decide to change a simple procedure, if you have a new employee who's responsible for something, if you change your pricing, if you change your policies, if no one is there to update the context file of how AI views this, you're getting into drift. And It's relying on old information. So you may be sending a client a new proposal that has old information, old pricing, old processes, old procedures, something that has not been updated with the AI. And so by the time someone notices it, that something's degraded, the damage could already be done. You could have a reputational damage, you could have a financial damage, you could have a regulatory damage. But if there's no one there to own it, you can't, again, say AI made the problem. It's like, no, somebody has to be assigned to that. So as the tool gets rolled out, 2 people can use it, and if only 2 of your 10 employees use it, the rest ride around it because they don't think it really works. They don't trust it. And so you paid for the license, the integration, the training, and your people are still doing something parallel. And it's not utilizing it. You're adopting a failure. You're not in sync. And AI is working in one direction, other employees are working in another direction. That's an adoption failure due to lack of training, lack of communications, lack of trust. So the more you can involve the employees, explain, train, have them understand the impact, and have them work consistently, AI is going to be working in a completely different role. And so involve employees to avoid this adoption failure cost. So here's what you can do to build an honest cost model. Number one, the basic. Here's your monthly or annual fee. It's in the quote, it's on the pricing page. You can easily say, great, $47 a month. But now what you have to do, which most people don't, is ask your vendor or the AI supplier, what is the API and token usage? What is going to be the cost if you have a workflow and you realize that we get 150 calls a day and it takes X amount of time? If we're replacing this with AI, what is going to be the estimated token usage or API cost for replacing humans and doing it with AI? Almost no one does this. Integration, as I mentioned earlier, hours time the contractor rate, hours time employee rate, whatever. Underestimated in general 2 to 3 times. Integration takes a long time because not only is there testing, but there's the development, and you have to consider edge cases and extraordinary use cases and backup cases and things like that, which again just add to more integration time. The training, the review, the ownership. How much does your employee spend on just doing the maintaining of these AI tasks? Never accounted for. And then your failure. Again, a 20% contingency is a minimum, and most people don't even think about it's going to fail. These are all of the costs that you have to take into consideration when you want to build in an autonomous agent or even just automation. So before signing, just try to get the numbers. If this saves X amount of human hours per week at $70 an hour or whatever you have, how many months does it take before you include all these costs, the integration, the training, the review, the failure reserve? Is it going to be profitable within a week, in a year? If it doesn't look profitable within 12 months, you need to look at it harder because there are going to be a lot of things. So let's say you run a 12-person professional services firm and you want to automate a client report drafting. So license, $150 a month, $1,800 a year. The API, 50 reports a month at 40 cents a report, there's $240. Integration, we spent 40 hours at $150 an hour, there's $6,000. People time, 2 hours a week to review, 8 hours of training at 12 people, $4,500. Failure reserve, 20% of 12,000, another 2,000. And so realistically, your license fee is $1,800, but the total cost is like $15,000. So that's where you really have to start figuring out what the true cost of AI is going to be. So, first things first is don't do it if you don't have documented standard operating procedures. If the process isn't documented and you try to automate it, it's automating a mess. And you can't automate what you haven't defined. And again, as I mentioned earlier, if 3 people explain the process slightly differently, which is the real way? Is it fully documented? AI needs to have it fully documented. The data, where are you getting your data? Is it a clean CRM? Is everybody entering data the same way? Are you getting some data from a contact list in your email and another one from your CRM and another one from your Slack channel? Where is the data? How clean is it? Who owns it? Again, garbage in is garbage out. And so if you don't have clean data, you're not going to have clean results. And then if there's no ownership, you need to have an assigned AI point person. If you don't have somebody to review the failures, review the drift, review the sunk costs, review the accessibility or anything like that, somebody has to be able to be a point person. Straightforward. So, the most expensive month isn't when you sign the contract. It's when you realize, probably in month 2 or 3, that there's a lot more cost than what that initial subscription fee was. So just be aware of that. It's going to happen. There are going to be costs that you're going to be unaware of. So, before your next AI conversation with a vendor or a contractor, do 3 things. Ask for the full cost breakdown, not just the license fee, but what's it going to take to integrate? What's my API usage going to be? What is a training plan? How long is it going to take? What is a review process? Who's going to be responsible? If they can't answer that, you don't want to really deal with them until they can answer that. And then your token usage. Understand how many tokens you're putting in and out. And especially when you get into the API usage. If you're doing a single person chat GPT or Claude session and you're asking it something, that's a very easily understandable controlled cost. But if you suddenly put in an automation that you have 12 to 20 people in your business using on an hourly basis, what is the token cost going in and out? That's something that you really have to start to understand. And then the decision checkpoint. Just make sure that you figure out, take my assessment at Assessment Cibi Creative. It's 15 minutes. It'll start off with what process are you trying to automate? And then ask about the 5 blind spots. Are your processes there? Is your data clean? Do you have people responsible? Do you understand what the cost is going to be? Do you understand the regulatory issues? Just take this and see if you have a better idea of how ready you actually are for implementing AI. And again, AI can do fantastic things for a business. It is a great technology, but it is technology. It's a tool, it's a task replacer, but it only does what it's been trained on. And so if you're trying to do something different and AI doesn't know about it, it is a repeater. It just knows what's in its history, its training, and it will give you answers. If you give the same question to a single session of AI, try this next time you're in AI. Take the exact same question, say that, what is the true cost of AI in my business? Something as simple as that. Repeat that question 3 times in the same session, and you will get completely different results every single time. So, how do you control this? What are going to be the costs? What do you have to really put under consideration? And interesting stuff. So anyway, so today, the AI decision checkpoint against assessment.cb creative. I also have a AI cost calculator, tools.cbcreative.com cost calculator helps you figure out what your cost is going to be. You already registered for this session. If you know anybody who wants to be part of this or understand this, give them that link. And again, my recordings, I try to get out the day or the day after recording. So hopefully you can take advantage of that.